welcome to Pivot, Pause, Promote. And now your host, Rebecca Silvestri.
Hello, this is Rebecca Silvestri, VP of Sales and Marketing. This is Pivot, Pause, Promote, the show for business leaders who don't let anything stand in their way. Not a pandemic, not a down economy, nothing. That sounds like you? Keep listening. Today, our show is on pause, and that basically means talking about working on the business, not in the business. Many business owners and leaders find ourselves bogged down every day working in the business, working on the minutiae of the business, and we don't get into planning and figuring out what are we going to do. So today I've got some incredible business leaders to help us navigate that and figure out how we can pause with purpose. Introducing Philip Silvestri. Hi, Philip.
Good morning. So my name is Philip Silvestri. I'm president and publisher of Local Profile, and our mission is to connect our communities through various channels like print, online publishing, and live virtual events nowadays. Georgia?
Hi, everyone. I'm Georgia Green, founder and CEO of BU Revolution. We help clients with organizational development, leadership, and culture. And I'm so excited to be here with you guys today because we believe in a whole person approach to leadership. And I'm here to help you use your character to lead through this.
Good morning. My name is Chris Scott. I'm the COO at Higher Effect. We provide back office business outsourcing, and it seems particularly relevant here because your back office has become, in many cases, your home office. We're going to share some tips in order to help you navigate the technical challenges of doing that today. And I'd like to introduce Jennifer.
Well, thank you. Good morning, Jennifer Scott, founder and CEO of Higher Effect. Higher Effect literally helps founders find their freedom. We support founder-led and family-owned businesses, combining, as Chris said, all the back office, bookkeeping, finance, human resources with cloud-based technology that can really, really help business owners during these crazy times. So that's why I'm really thrilled that we're hosting this program today. Buddy?
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I'm Buddy Broyles with Visual Learning Solutions. We are a training development team for any training needs. And why I'm here today is to answer any questions or assist with this new environment we're all in, to where everybody's remote to the most part, and they still need their training, they still need their education, and still need to be ready when the market picks back up with new skills and technology. Rebecca?
Well, we're going to start off the show by talking about what in the world do we mean by telling you to pause right now. Surely we should all be hitting the ground running like crazy people and doing everything we possibly could to just do things. Wrong. You shouldn't just be doing things. Let's take a moment, not too long, a moment to pause. We're going to start off. Georgia, what do we mean by pause with purpose?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what pause doesn't mean. It doesn't mean freezing. So just like you said, Rebecca, and I loved that. So maybe you're pausing because you can't pivot. So maybe your business structure just doesn't allow you to do that. Or it can mean you just don't want to. So maybe you have enough cash reserves to ride this out and you want to use this opportunity to intentionally work on your business. You guys, when this opens back up, the doors are going to open and there will be a period of adjustment that happens in that. When those doors back up open, you don't want to be going from 0 to 60 from that starting point. You want to be at 60 when those doors open. When the first person to market is going to win this game. So we want you to use this time to be building up your offerings, building up your business foundational structure. So when those doors open, you are out there, you are ready, and you are blazing those trails in this new environment. So now is the time when you are pausing to be doing your creative work, to be focused on what you want to go to market with when this is over. Ask yourself, what are people going to want during that time, and how can you get it out there fast? That requires you to prepare your people, your processes, and your systems for reopening. And Buddy, I know you've got a great example of this, so I'm going to turn it over to you so you can showcase that.
One of the companies that I'm aware of is called Always Good, and they're a sales training team who help individuals and teams realize their purpose and their sales capabilities. So I met with the team there and spoke briefly with Joe, and Joe had a few thoughts on what they're doing in this time. Basically, they're taking this opportunity to build up their training modules, things that they can sell and be ready to hit the ground running when it does scale up. But they're doing that now. They're changing what they've done before, which was a lot of instructor-led training. Instead now, of course, they're taking it to video. They're taking it to this new remote possibility, selling that stuff online like the website I just showed you. So let's hear it directly from Joe at Always Good.
We realized really quickly that we weren't going to be able to have the face-to-face interaction, and we were used to meeting in person with teams. And so we changed that. We had to go immediately to online, bigger Zoom account with more people in a room at a time, had to have our online learning capabilities there so that people could really learn at their pace when they could use it, instead of only during the sessions we had scheduled face-to-face with them. And then we also have created brand new crisis packages to help businesses out just for a month or 2 months or 3 months to get them ahead of the curve so that when we go back to normal, everybody's ready to go.
So you can see what Joe's doing right now and his team, is being ready for when everything goes back to normal. So we'll look forward to see how Joe and his team develop their training and their business, and how that, we'll have real data for when they grow and see what happens there as they're pivoting and getting ready to promote that product.
I just love Always Good and everything that they're doing. One thing they always do is they are always good. They're always on. They've always got great energy. So that, above all else, if you've got great energy and you're positive, that makes a huge difference. But when we really dive down into it, how can we really effectively use this time to prepare our offering? Georgia?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll give you two things. One is be forward thinking, and the second is to have structure in your creation. So what do I mean by forward thinking? You guys, when the doors open, it's not going to be, we're hearing this term, the new norm. And I would say it's more about your current reality than it is the new norm. We have to define what is the new norm. And we have to decide what it is that people are going to be going back to and how they're going to be going back to that. It's not going to be the doors open and things are right back to the way that they once were. So you have to forward think and imagine. So this is, when I say that you're doing your creative work, it's really about using your imagination and using data and hypothesis to say, what is it going to be like? So we want to really challenge to forward think into what is the market going to be like, so that you can shift your offering almost into a staged approach. And that requires having an empathetic approach to what people are experiencing and what they're going through. And especially during this time of social isolation, we end up really just kind of having our own self view, and we think others are experiencing that same thing. So what I would like to do is challenge you to think about what your creative offering is, and then ask around, ask your market what they are experiencing and what they're looking forward to when they come back. Once you have that idea, the second point is to have structure in your creation. You need to have a solid plan. So oftentimes what we do is we end up just kind of, especially during this time where everything is so fluid and unstructured, we're winging it quite a bit. And in business, that's totally normal, but you want to have some level of structure. So do a business plan for an interim period of what it looks like when those doors reopen, and then make your execution items so that you know that you are working up and building up towards that for when they reopen.
Awesome. Now, Philip, I'm going to head over to you in a second, because we've been doing a lot of planning and creative thinking, and Philip is really an incredible visionary and thinks about a lot of different things. So I wanted him to fill us in on what we've been thinking about, just so that you can see some practical implication of what it means to pause and plan for the future. Philip?
Thank you, Rebecca. So we have been working on several companies, some of which we've had to really put into high gear pivot, and some of which we've had to put into pause. And really, when we're talking about pause, it's, as Georgia said, it's been a lot of using this downtime to plan ahead, to really take a look and take that deep breath that you don't usually get during the day-to-day of running the business, and being able to prepare and to be able to go ahead and start being more intentional about what you're working on your business. It's those processes, it's the structure, it's looking out at the opportunity. But more importantly today, it's realizing the world has changed. Re-examining the assumptions that we all made when we started the business, or the assumptions that we took for granted a week ago, a month ago. There are opportunities that those underlying assumptions, having changed, will provide us. So if we can just think through them and take this time to be as intentional as possible, talk to your team, look at the scenario and ask questions that are, why is this happening? Why do we do it this way? All of these items then can help us to really get a better opportunity and leverage this time that we have to pause to be able to get out of the gate and go 0 to 60 immediately.
Absolutely. And one of the key critical things that we've been doing and that I've been recommending, especially to all our clients, is think about and picture in your mind, who is your ideal client? Who is that person that you want to target? But what is it specifically that you can do for that target client right now? So not what you were doing before, but how has things changed and how has that affected not you? Stop thinking about you. Think about your target client and what you can provide them and how that has changed. So that's a key question to be asking yourself. Who is my ideal client and how have their needs changed and how can I help them now? And going back to in the office, I know that Georgia has some great tips for that. Georgia?
Yeah, so, we're all talking about planning ahead and forward thinking, and we're talking about our creative offerings. But now we have to also look at what is the foundational structure of our company. So maybe during this downtime of pausing, you realize some things that maybe aren't working, or some things you would just like to enhance and do better. So when we look at what is the core of our business, it's really people, processes, and systems. And we're going to talk about that a lot today. So it always starts, you guys, with people. Businesses are just the sum of people, whether that's your clients or your internal team, your vendors, the people that you work with, right? And that requires relationship building. So before you can even say, I'm going to go out and do the market and do this, you have to have people who are going to do that. And you have to understand what it is that they are going through. So before we start talking about the people, one thing that I want to set home is understanding the empathetic approach. So a good leader is an empathetic leader. You have to understand what they are going through and what they're going to be going back to. So pause for a second and remember when all this went down and our world changed overnight, what happened to your people? They were in shock. The whole world changed. They didn't know how to do their work. They didn't know how to even live their life. And you guys, this is what is going to happen when the doors reopen. They're going to be experiencing that exact same thing, just in reverse. So now they're having to go back to a new and altered reality. It's not going to be the exact same as what they went into. So have that expectation and lead to it. So knowing that, how can you put a plan in place to help your people? And one thing that I can share with you, a personal experience from this, as many of you know, or if you don't know, I solo hiked from Mexico to Canada. It took me 5.5 months of living in the wilderness to do that. And when I came back to an office setting, it was shocking, you guys. And I know that this, if you have never done something like that, if you have gone on a sabbatical, you might understand this. It's the same thing. This isn't like just coming back from a vacation. You have had an altered experience that has radically shifted your life during this time of quarantine. You are not the same person coming back into the workplace. So you're going to have this period of shock. So some of the things that I experienced was difficulty in sitting down for a long period of time, difficulty in focusing for a long period of time, difficulty dealing with fluorescent lighting, difficulty dealing with people around me all the time, because right now we're in social isolation. We have more silence than ever, and we're going to go back into that hustle and bustle. So it's things like that that I want you to, going back to, use your imagination in what people are going to be experiencing and plan for that and have empathy. And I know Jennifer has a lot of experience on the peopling side, so I would love to hear more about what she has to say on the peopling side before we get into systems and processes too.
I'm a big fan of putting people first. In fact, at Higher Effect, we have two core values. The first is people first, and the second is technology forward. And when we talk about people, it's all of our stakeholders. We have our employees, we have our clients, we have our communities, we have our vendors, and frankly, we have the environment as one of our stakeholders as well. But it's really all about putting people first. I love that you brought that up. One of the questions that I get asked a lot on the HR side is really, how can we keep our culture going? How can we maintain that culture that we had in office now that we're working remotely? And I think that that's a great question. And it kind of depends on how you define culture. Right, so culture's not the ping pong table and the foosball in the break room. Culture's really the experience your employees have working at your company. It's how business gets done. It's the way things are. So you can actually incorporate that culture even with people working remotely, and even with clients who you now have to work with remotely. And it's really about intentionally thinking about the apps and the tools and the technology that you want to use. If you've got a really fun, sort of laid back environment, you might want to check out Slack. If you're more of a service provider on the professional services side and you're working both internally and also externally with clients, you might want to look at something like the Microsoft Office Teams platform or Google Hangouts. There are a lot of different things that you can do that still keeps that culture going if the tools and the apps you're using reflect that. I think it's also great to build in culture time. So there are lots of companies that do little pair ups, put someone from two different departments that might never speak to one another and give them a 15-minute, go chat about X because you know that they both happen to be interested in that. Sort of building in that culture time, that water cooler time, is another great opportunity to enhance and continue your corporate culture, even though people are not sitting next to one another. So, yeah, there's also some really great things like perks that you can do that are online, having lots of fun with gifting out kudos. Maybe it's an Apple iTunes gift card or a Spotify something or other. There are lots of cool tools and companies out there that can help you do that as well. Thanks. Rebecca?
I wanted to ask Philip a quick question, and that was, what are your thoughts, Philip, on keeping people working from home? This doesn't have to be specific to local profile, but we've all been working at home. As far as I'm concerned, it's been working great. I mean, I know the children aspect might be a little bit difficult, to say the least. But Philip, what are your thoughts on how people can maybe keep people working from home, or even just have that conversation with staff? Philip?
I think that's a great question, and it's been something that we've never intentionally been prepared for. Though we had a lot of cloud services in place. And because a lot of our team actually might be out in the field or is able to work from home from time to time, we did have some of the systems in place. And those are just having the G Suite or Office Online. I think one of the things that I've been hearing over and over again, and really has been important for us, and something that you can get dragged away from, is keep communicating with your team. It's easy to get bogged down with the chaos, with the pivoting, with the pausing, with the thinking. But it's really important to try to reach out to the team and make sure that you have that communication. Because sometimes it's easy to walk through and say hello, and you can kind of gauge how your team is doing. In this particular situation, you have to be much more intentional. And that's what we've been trying to do, setting up a group, some group chats. We're launching our first online happy hour. The one rule is no talking about work, just to be able to connect with team members. And these are not just tasks that be done, but these are people that, like you, are being affected. And it's only all of us working together and keeping each other sane during these rather interesting times that we're going to get through it. So it's if you've got a good team, they need your support and you need their support. So it's also a two-way street to keep yourself sane.
So I'd love to add to that if I could. It's so important too that you're seeing your team as a team, right? You're not just delegating tasks to them to make them feel like task monkeys at this point. You're giving them opportunities to help you in the pause process, in the planning, in the innovation, in the creativity, giving them an opportunity to really add value beyond their quote normal role, because normal isn't normal anymore.
You would be surprised at who is really stepping up and giving 110% and saying, I can help with something that never thought that, never even considered that they would help. So being able to have the communication, sharing what you're going through, also allows the team members to understand and be willing to step up if possible.
So, okay, that's for right now, communicating with our team and also thinking about, do we keep them at home, but also looking into the future. We may have had to furlough some of our staff, or maybe we've even had to fire some of our staff. Not us, actually, which is really great, but I know a lot of companies have had to. Jennifer, do we actually have to hire staff back? What are the rules?
That's a really great question, Rebecca. And there's some considerations on the legal side that should be considered, depending on the size of your company, depending on the reason for that furlough or that layoff, and also depending on how that was communicated with the employees who were affected by the layoff. So it's hard to give a straight up one-shot answer. Generally speaking, I will say no, you don't have to hire everyone back that you laid off. I would certainly check with an HR professional or an employment attorney if you feel like there might be some nuances you want to address, especially if there's anything about disability, or the fact that maybe someone got sick and so that's why they were on leave, or some other situations that might impact a straight answer to that question. But generally speaking, you do not have to hire everyone that you laid off back. You might want to think longer term about the implications of not doing that, however, and how that might affect the team who is staying, who still had a job after this.
That's great advice, Jennifer. And I'm just thinking, if I'm going into this and coming out the other side, and for example, we've decided to do videos, and that means that maybe we need different people. What are some great tips for, in general, if you've come out or you've identified a new opportunity, your business needs different people with different skills? What is the best way to go about hiring the right people for your culture?
I love that question. Thank you. I think it's so important to define the roles that you are looking to fill before you do anything with hiring. And so I've been recommending to our clients who have had to pivot, who are going to be doing things a little bit differently, in some cases a lot differently after this, that they really need to define what it is they're looking for in that new hire. As you guys were talking before about, what does your customer need, now during this? What kind of changes are you going to have to make? It's the same thing that's going to apply to your staff. And so really digging into the accountabilities, what are you going to hold this person accountable for? What is the goal? What is a measure of success? And if you can really nail that down, now is the best time to be thinking about it. right? Planning for exactly the kind of person and the exact skill set and the exact culture fit and the values that you need, really getting that all into place, even maybe creating your job ad. There's no reason to not start looking, especially if the person's going to be remote anyway. Hiring doesn't have to come to a dead standstill, especially if your plan is to continue having people work from home. So this could be a perfect opportunity to get some new talent that might not have been on the market before now.
Absolutely. I mean, so what I'm hearing, I think, is that it's key to, first of all, define exactly who it is that you want and what they're going to be responsible for. But it's also so important to understand, what is your culture? Because if you don't really know what your culture and your core beliefs are, how can you possibly ensure that you're hiring the right person that's going to be a great fit for your company? Now is such a great time to sit down and think, who are we? What do we stand for? What do we believe? And therefore make sure that any future hires fit that. And that's also something you can take some time to communicate to your company too.
Absolutely. I love putting in what I guess in the recruiting space and the employer branding space is called an employee value proposition. So not only articulating your culture and your core values, which are critical, by the way, but also what the employees are going to get in return for working for you. And it's not just about salary, right? It's about so much more than that, especially in these days. Buddy, you had a thought on that, I know. You want to?
Yes, absolutely. So one thing you said, Jennifer, which keyed into what we do is, what you're offering your employees is so much more than salary. You offer, Georgia mentioned culture and all these other things, but training is, obviously what we offer, but there are certain steps to training. And in this environment, it's so much different. But at home, even with a phone, you can achieve some level of training, but there are certain steps, and the steps are, they're like 8 main steps, but I'm just going to gloss over a few of them, and we can answer more in questions later. But first, you need to perform a training needs assessment. Is there a need for that training? And the best way to find that is ask your people. If there's a broken process or something like that, just send questions out, assess if there's training. And then from there, the next step is, identify, is there a need for the business? Will that benefit the business to create this training? Because sometimes we know training is expensive potentially, and there's other factors beneath that. And then we're all adults, and adults learn differently than there are different types of learners. Some people like white papers, some people like video. So that, along with your needs assessment, you want to ask those questions. What's the best way for you to take this information in? If it's procedural or process, turn a knob, then that works well with video. But if it's soft skills, then it's scenarios or even just a written form, like almost like reading a book, and you can absorb more from hearing conversations. So what's important in this time is, if you're offering and bringing people back online for the transition when we move forward, make sure you're training and along with, you're offering salaries, but you're also offering the opportunity for people to succeed at their jobs. And how do you do that is make sure you're thinking now, what can they train on that's available out there currently? What does your company offer? And then what should it be offering when they come back into the fold? I mean, exactly. Jennifer just raised her hand and said, it's professional development. People want to know that they have a career path and that they're going to learn while working with you.
I completely agree. Professional development is one of the top engagement factors that corporations look at when they're talking about employee engagement and reasons that people stay in their jobs and love what they do and love where they're working. It's the opportunity to grow not only within the business, but personally as well. And giving those opportunities for training are huge.
So I love this conversation around kind of looking at what is the company, what is the culture, and how do I make sure that I have the right people that are sitting in those seats. So we have something at BU called Motive IQ. It talks about 14 factors that are actually scientifically backed to and proven to be linked to engagement and retention. It's called Motive IQ, so it's motivational intelligence. And it's so important to understand, what is a person motivated by? So above your culture, above your values, above all of that, there's a deep underlying root of why a person does what they do. So right now, I foresee that, especially when we come into this new market, is there's going to be a flood of people who are in the market looking for a job, and they may just be there to collect a paycheck, but that's only going to last for so long. So it's going to be tempting for companies to say, hey, we need to reopen, let's just put some butts in seats, right? Or for people to just accept a job. But we have to remember the long-term impact of what that's going to have on our business and make sure that we are directly matching that. And what you can do is look at what is a person's motivating factor for being there. So I know Buddy and Jennifer, you both hit on motivating factors being above compensation. There's actually 14 factors that are linked to that of why a person does what they do. And if you can speak to their motivating factor, they're going to go and perform so much better, and they're actually going to be happy and love their job, and they can't not do it because it's tied into what their passion is. So I would encourage you to not just look at your value system, but looking at what it is that motivates your people and tie into that. Buddy?
And Georgia, what we found with our some of our training customers, the feedback we get is a well-trained workforce sees value that you're giving them. You know, the perceived value is I'm getting quality training, and people looking out for develop of my professional process and all of that. And that alone, like we talked about before, is so much more than salary because they feel like they're valued, that you're giving them something to work with. And on top of that, there are metrics so they can see that they took the training and they're doing a better job. And then that's an opportunity to excel professionally, but also within your organization. So it's really important to make sure you have all of that grouped for your team.
Thinking about right now, but also in the future, if we keep people at home, I know that a lot of people are having some problems with internet connectivity, doing learning online, all that kind of thing. I know, Chris, you've got some thoughts, and maybe to help us figure out my cell phone service, my internet's not working, my kid keeps taking my phone, crazy stuff. How can you help us, Chris?
So I know what we're all thinking is, where's the IT department when we need them? Right. So when you're talking about your connectivity, you really want to, you got to realize that the weakest link is where you're going to get slowed down. There's some basic blocking and tackling that we can all do. And you may not have done this very often in your home network because it was a luxury, not a business necessity. If we now think of it as a tool for livelihood, as a professional, you're going to take some time to take care of your tools. Take a look at your cable modem, or take a look at your router. Log into it. Make sure it's got the latest firmware. There have been a lot of changes recently. Increases in security, new protocols that have come out, and mostly they don't impact you when you're using your home for personal needs. But now that you've scaled up the stress that you're putting on that system, when you put a system under stress, sometimes you get cracks. So you always want to go for making sure that your systems are in place and are as good as they can be. If you have the possibility, right, Wi-Fi is becoming a very, very congested airspace. If you have a wired connection within your house that you can use to get the signal to particular devices, then you take all of that noise out of that particular device. And Wi-Fi is both easy and very complicated. So, just the beginner tip on Wi-Fi is a lot of these routers have two bands, a 2.4 gigahertz band and a 5 gigahertz band. Well, the 5 gigahertz band is a lot faster and has more channels. So if you have devices that support that, make sure you're connecting to your 2.5 or your 5 gigahertz band. Other things like printers, whatever that don't need speed, they're fine on your slower band. That will improve your throughput. So a pro tip is, because all of our neighborhoods have really become Wi-Fi saturated, there's a lot of noise in the background. And, you know, it's sort of like being back in high school where you like your music better than somebody else's, so you turn it up. Well, this is what all of our routers are doing to each other, trying to find clear airspace. This can also cause performance problems within your router, because that makes it use a lot of its CPU cycles figuring out where to broadcast, as opposed to being busy moving your traffic around. You may want to actually turn off the automatic channel selection, and there's a couple of tools out there. We'll put links in the notes for Wi-Fi spectrum analyzers that you can find the least noisy bands that are around your house. You'd be amazed at how much faster your performance will be through your router and how much clearer your connections can be when you're not fighting with your neighbors for that bandwidth. Something else that comes up a lot is communication. And in a general sense, you're communicating with your clients. How do you keep, you know, now that you have a Wi-Fi connection, what do you do with it? Well, so if your business is paused, and we've talked a lot about, you know, what you can do during the pause, but don't lose connection with your clients at this time. Make sure that you are sending an email out, making phone calls, or setting up video chats with key clients so that you can be communicating with them. When the pause is over, here's what happens next. You know, the government's released our rolling restart plans. It would, I think, behoove a lot of us to explain to our customers how you will be providing your services at different points in the rolling restart. And if your business is unpaused, similar to what's going on with us, you know, our clients need us more than ever for their consulting. We do weekly short meetings, video meetings with clients. We do send out email updates that are of more, you know, general news, but don't lose that personal connection. And it's very important to what Georgia said earlier. Each business, each person is experiencing what's going on differently. And little video chats, don't make them long. Say, look, 15 minutes or less. We want to touch base. What are we doing the last couple of days for you? What's going on now? Okay. And the final question was about cell service. And cell service, so you do have some options if you have bad cell service at your house. The first one is that if you have a landline, you can forward your cell phone to it. The people calling you won't know that it's gone somewhere else. Now, a lot of people don't have landlines, so what do? Well, the easiest solution is divert your calls so they come over Wi-Fi. Well, how does that happen? Some carriers like AT&T, it's a switch on your phone, and when you're on Wi-Fi, your phone will register and AT&T will send the call over the internet instead of over the cell towers. There are a number of apps, Skype, Viber, you know, there's different voice over IP solutions that you can use to make calls. And you may not know this, but if you have an Amazon assistant, you can make phone calls from your Amazon assistant. I can't say her name because she's behind me and she'll start talking. But the Google will also do that. You can make phone calls that appear to be coming from your cell phone number from your home assistant. So, I mean, there are other ways, but there's a lot of different options. Think how to move your telephony out of the box and send us a question, and I'll be happy to answer based on your individual needs.
That was incredibly helpful. There's so many tips that I just would never have thought of, and I hope that Philip wrote them down, or at least we can replay this and figure those out, because that was really, really very key useful advice. So just before we finish up, I know that Buddy has some great thoughts on how we can do some training right now. Generally, person-to-person training is very, very effective because we can see each other, and nuances that we can read off other people's faces often we miss in an email, a text message, a phone call. So what are some really creative different ways that we can make sure we're still training our people? Buddy?
Thank you, Rebecca. So, what's important is something like we're doing right now is face-to-face. Every opportunity to be face-to-face with any meeting tool is valuable, especially if we're used to, if you're an instructor-led trainer, someone who is used to be in front of an audience, invite several people to that. And a lot of people are doing that online right now. But what's important is setting a schedule, just like you would for any deliverable you have for your work. Set a schedule for training. There are different skills you've always wanted to learn. Use that, what you had is commute time, use that time to learn that new skill. And if you just Google search, there's lynda.com, there's the MOOCs I mentioned in the last episode. There's so many different, even Harvard has a huge amount of skills available to you out there. So now is definitely the time to train up, use this pause time to increase your skills and be ready. But definitely for the face-to-face, these meetings that we're using even for this show are so valuable. So don't neglect yourself and obviously your visual presence. Take a shower, comb your hair, be ready to talk. We're still in business. Business is not stopped. So be business ready, be presentable. Thank you, Rebecca.
I absolutely love that advice, but also feel free to wear shorts underneath. What am I wearing underneath this sweater?
Yeah, nobody stand up on this call. Nobody stand up.
I'll let you guys think about that. So we're just going to do a quick roundup. What is your best piece of advice for how we should be going forward in pause? Georgia?
Yeah, I love that question. So pause, really take a moment to breathe and step back and forward think into who do you want to be when this is all over. You have the opportunity right now to redefine who you are and how you show up. But I want to challenge you. So if you are with BU, you know that we always give you a homework assignment. So I'm challenging you this week to think about not just who you want to be, but where do you think the future of business is going? And how can we as business owners and business leaders play a part in where we're taking our society as a whole? And you get the opportunity right now during this pause to create that.
All right, crew, did anyone have a last thought to throw out to the universe?
So one thing to remember, you're all owners, you're all entrepreneurs, you're all professionals. This isn't easy. If this was easy to do, somebody else would be doing it. You all have a unique set of skills, and just remember, it's your profession, it's your calling, this is your passion. Don't forget about it just because there's a lot of craziness going on.
That is so true, Chris. I absolutely love that. And for me, just the last piece of advice is stay positive. When you're pausing, and especially if you're so used to being the entrepreneur that's running and on the go, and we're doing this and we're doing that, and suddenly you have to stop and be introspective and think, then it's going to, sometimes you're going to feel a little bit down. When that happens, this is what I do, okay? I love sharing this. People love this. So we're going to do it now. If you're feeling down, just stop and do this. I feel great. I am full of energy. Today is the best day ever. And it really is. Every day can be your best day ever. You just have to think positive and go with it. Love for all of you to join us next week. We'll be doing our Pause, Pivot, Promote show next week, 10 a.m. next Friday. And I've lost count of the days, got no idea what day next Friday is, but hope you'll join us and look forward to seeing you there. Bye-bye.